Chapter 1 of the Midnight Axtian Pact. Because a few of you had asked for Chapter 1. Okay, fine, maybe two of you. But still, here it is. I hope you like it. Chapter 1 Nox, Blood Moon Pack, Abyssinia, 16 years later. Abyssinia. I jolted awake, my stomach rolling, and before my mind could keep up, I was already halfway to the bathroom. No sooner was I on my knees in front of the toilet, I was emptying my stomach's contents into the porcelain bowl. I shuddered as I heaved, my panicked heart slamming against my rib cage. My body shook with adrenaline, my blood pumping through my veins like a heartbeat. Nope, go away. Their screams echoed through my skull, the smell of smoke, fire, and blood hanging in the air. The floor felt sticky. I looked down, seeing nothing but blood. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. It was just a nightmare, but it felt so real. The gore and flesh of another being filling my mouth and stomach. I heaved again and didn't stop until there was nothing left. I looked down to find myself partially shifted, ready to kill. I blinked a few times and groaned in an attempt to calm myself. The sky outside had begun to lighten, and I knew I wouldn't be able to even think about climbing back into bed. I needed to go to her. I inhaled deeply and exhaled slowly, counting each breath until my heart rate slowed. But I knew I would still have to go for a run to get rid of the adrenaline that lingered. Shoving my hands through my hair, I got up on shaky legs and made my way back to my room, starting to dress, my mind racing with the nightmare's images. The memories hit me at this same time every year. A solid week of barely any sleep thanks to that small but horrendous skirmish 16 years ago. Sometimes when I finally did snatch moments of sleep, I would wake up covered in sweat, shaking like a leaf. Then there were the nightmares that felt so vivid I could still taste the blood and gore in my mouth, the slickness covering my fur and skin. My stomach would turn and I would have to bolt to the bathroom, as I had today. Other times I would wake, partially shifted, the adrenaline pumping through my veins and my body primed for attack, as though the war hadn't ended 16 years ago. The only way I knew I could deal with these nightmares was to go for a run in wolf form, then head to her house in the middle of the woods. My need for my mate was too great to ignore after these sleepless nights, even if all I could do was sit by her front door so as not to disturb her sleep. Although most of the time she was the one waiting for me with some fresh clothing and a hot drink, as though she knew I was coming. It was nice. We didn't talk much, sitting in silence, her leaning against me as I would curl around her, feeding from her warmth and thankful for the peace of mind she gave me. I had just slipped on my second shoe, knowing it would be a waste of time when I shifted, when a knock at my door brought me out of my thoughts. Why the hell would anyone else be awake at this time of the morning? My wolf, Midnight, growled in agitation. He wanted to get a move on and see our mate as well. I grunted for the impertinent visitor to enter. The door opened and a head of long, dark brown curly hair and amber eyes popped into the room, a small smirk on the man's face. I scowled back. "What do you want, Mark? And why are you here at my door this early?" I questioned my second ranking of two betters as I stood up and made my way to the door, pulling it open. Despite having betas at my command, I wasn't ever going to be an alpha. There were only two ways you could get that title. One being if you were from alpha stock, and two if you were going to challenge the highest ranking wolf or alpha to a death match, which was almost suicidal. Well, I definitely didn't come from alpha stock, and I doubt Alpha Sterling would name me as heir, especially when there were more experienced and seasoned warriors in our pack and beta packs. And while it might bother some to be overlooked, it didn't impact me at all. Yet, presumably due to my long-standing status as one of his most loyal warriors, he still allowed me to pick a beta, or two as the case may be. It helped us grow into a tight-knit team, able to tackle the most dangerous situations and difficult decisions, working as a unit in times of trouble. Mark and Lyndon had been my best friends since puphood, after all. The other man stumbled into my room as I yanked on the door, straightening up as he turned around and shot me a glare. I snickered and leaned against the door frame with my arms crossed over my chest. He glanced around my room, surveying the chaos of thrown bedsheets and torn pillows. "Another nightmare?" he asked, looking at me with concern etched on his face. I shrugged one of my shoulders. Is going for a run really gonna help?" he asked, with a knowing smirk, flicking his eyes over me. I narrowed mine at his. His amber eyes glinted with mischief. "So what if I'm going for a run?" I raised an eyebrow. An eyebrow. I raised an eyebrow at him, and he snickered. "Sure you're not going to go and sneak off with that mate of yours? Finally gonna get rid of those blue balls and stop acting so..." He trailed off as I growled at his choice of words. I knew he was fishing for information, and I refused to entertain him. Mark knew full well that her and I hadn't gone there yet, and the innocent expression he'd plastered on his face didn't fool me. I pulled him out of my room, slammed my door closed, and walked away from him with a shake of my head. "Aw, come on, man, lighten up. It was a joke. What do you do when you get there? Bang on the door until she wakes up?" "She's always waiting for me when I go there early in the morning," I said over my shoulder, annoyed at being questioned. I could hear him make some more useless and crude suggestions about how I could handle my tension, but I stopped listening before I ended up smacking him hard enough that he couldn't be found, or made him an early grave. Just because he was one of my best friends didn't mean I had to take shit about my mate from him, or anyone. "He's just jealous he hasn't found his mate yet," Midnight snickered from the back of my mind. I snorted as I made my way down the pack house stairs to the main floor, which housed a large living room to the left and kitchens to the right, and headed out the door. I shifted mid-stride with a few snaps and cracks, not caring about my old clothes. The sound of tearing cloth reminded me of the new specialized clothing created by the Banjer and human military sector that remained intact when we shifted. A form of magic woven into their fibers allowed the material to remain with our human form. essentially disappearing while we were in our shifted form and then rematerializing as we transformed back. As it was so new, only a few top warriors in the pack had tested them, me being one of them. But it was just to preserve modesty, as some races were uptight about those little things, unlike us wolves. After I had finished with my shift, I shook out my silvery black fur, enjoying the feeling of the slight breeze wafting through it. I trotted off towards the thick forest that surrounded Albicinia. Jesus. And the pack. I already knew that Axtian had a set of warmed up clothes straight out of the dryer waiting for us, and was most likely making me coffee. I huffed out a content sigh. It's a shame that Axtian can't live in the pack house with us, Midnight whined, and, as always, I agreed with him. I knew why we couldn't risk it, though. It was far too dangerous after the last incident. A few years ago, someone tried to take Alpha Sterling out. We managed to uncover the plot, learning the would-be assassin had planned to kill both him and me, likely to destroy both Alpha and Top Warrior. Apparently, he thought I was going to be next in line, which was a stupid notion if I ever heard one. Like I said before, there was no word or whisper that I was ever going to be next in line. It seemed that we had a mole in our pack, though, and no matter how hard we looked for them, they either completely fell off the face of the earth, or the mole just hid deeper, growing underground. Not growing, underground. Unfortunately, before he had a chance to rat out his boss, the assassin died from his wounds. He did? What? That's news to me. Alright. It had been like a cat and mouse chase for the past few years, and until we figured out who, and I had my suspicions, was feeding the lower demons information, who in turn shared that intelligence with their superiors, most likely part of the circle, which is where the mole's trial goes cold. Axtian and I had to live apart. We knew that the Silesian king and queen had tasked Alpha Sterling with her protection as well, and he had it in his thick head that keeping her away from the main pack house would keep her safe. But I felt it was stupid. She'd be safer with me than some warded cottage outside the pack house, and we wouldn't be able to take our hands off our mate. I growled low at the fact that I was missing out on a lot with her. I was still amazed that she was my mate. Her parents explained years ago that even though vampires and Banduri sometimes imprint on one another, it doesn't necessarily make them mates. Mostly they'll imprint on those they feel will make the biggest impact on their lives, as friends and family. And families. But becoming mates with an imprinted one is rare. So they were more than surprised at the outcome. At first, I was simply her protector. But once I turned 21, I knew that she was mine, and I couldn't have been more proud. Midnight wouldn't shut up about it and always wanted to be near her. Oh, I love Midnight. Even when we were right next to her, he wanted to be closer. What a dork. I so badly wanted to yell it from the rooftops that she was mine, but the law is the law, and it forbids the act of marking, mating, writing if the mate is not yet 21 years of age. This is intended to prevent the younger paranormals from being coerced by their mates into doing something they weren't prepared for before they were ready, like mating and marking, since the latter was permanent. This doesn't always stop a select few who have tried, resulting in some harsh punishments. So I had waited. Then finally, on her 21st birthday, the realization hit her like a ton of bricks as I sent a flood of love, lust, and longing accidentally down the mate bond. Finally able to admit my love for her. And in front of the Alpha, Mark, Lyndon, and her family, she had socked me in the jaw simply because I had already known but couldn't act upon it. Apparently, she didn't like secrets. Dragging my thoughts back to the present for a moment, I took a deep breath, seeing what I could sniff out as I walked into the woods and made my way past one of the many lock boxes that were placed all over the woods. They had clothing and provisions for weary humans and other paranormal species who accidentally stumbled onto our lands. The warm, early morning breeze brought through all the scents of animals and flowers from the small glen up ahead. Mixed in with the other flavors was the tantalizing fragrance of vanilla and mandarins, a luxurious trace. A bit stale, but still there. Like my very own path to find her. No other wolf or creature could detect this on her, nor what I smelled like to her. It was purely a way for mates to find each other, a bond of sorts. Special to only the intended. Imagine your favourite scents in the world, then times it by 100, and you have how intoxicating her essence is to me. I bet it is. It sometimes makes it that much harder to stick to the rules and not pounce on her. Dodgy bastard. Half an hour later, I made it to the glade. I stopped to take it in as a breeze blew through my fur once again, bringing with it a stale scent of something familiar which I couldn't quite put my paw on. Feeling uneasy, I decided to do a pass around the small clearing. A river snaked its way through the expanse from the massive mountain range that towered over the tops of the trees, and it cut the glade in two with its lively flow. The other side held a sizable meadow filled with vibrantly coloured wildflowers, no matter the season, that started from the small bridge that connected both sides. On the far side of the clearing stood a small log cabin. Apparently Alpha Sterling had built it for his mate, and she had called it Wild Moon Cottage. Sadly, she and many others had died during the first wave of the war. Behind it, a vast expanse of thick, deep woods, so dense you could barely see 2 feet in front of you. A few different paths led from the bridge but all led to the thinner side of the dense forest and into the great unknown, as they say. I sat down with a large, a loud thud after my short patrol had not given up the source of the familiar yet unknown smell. My tail and ears twitched lazily, but I was still alert. This glade was very beautiful, but it still stung that we couldn't share it with our mate. Still, Border Patrol regularly guarded the area, and it was far enough from the main pack to avoid any conflict should someone attack or visit unannounced, and close enough we would be able to get there with a few minutes once shifted. The idea was to keep Axtian a secret, something we had managed for all these years. As or when we could finally mate. Well, I'm not sure what the Alpha planned to do then. Could we really keep her in a cabin forever? Eventually, she would likely inherit the vampiric throne. Would I join her? More questions to keep me up at night. I huffed out a very wolf-like sigh and let out a small whine of sadness. When I saw that Axtian wasn't up like normal. We shared our thoughts, especially when unguarded or if we felt highly emotional, so she always knew when I had one of my nightmares, but she must have fallen back to sleep. I was met with a flood of disappointment. Half of it was from me, while another, fiercer, stronger wave flooded through from Midnight. Although Midnight knew why Axtian couldn't be with us currently. Sorry guys, I'm eating an ice block as well. It still hurt him to be away from his mate for this long. It wasn't natural for wolves. My thoughts started to drift as I waited for her to wake. Even though I wouldn't change my connection with Axtian for the world, I hated to think that some of our pack members only saw me as a glorified guardian. Midnight let out a small growl at the thought, and I tried to calm him. Well, some mocked me for what they saw as soft duties. Others felt like I was still being punished for not protecting the other trainee warriors in a job gone bad over 16 years ago. Before I had even linked with Axtian, and sometime before the war, Alpha Sterling had Grayson and I worked together on a mission to save a possessed human last seen in Silesia. Grayson was a bastard, but he did tend to get the job done. We had managed to track her down, and that's when things got out of hand. And while I was wounded, Grayson took things into his own hands. The mission was forfeit. We lost our entire team, and blood was on Grayson's hands. But I copped all the blame, and that little shit made sure of it. So if anyone was the mole, I'd bet all my money that it was Grayson Dagon. Unfortunately, I had no proof, and voicing my thoughts to the Alpha without any solid leads would make me sound like a petty child. It also didn't help that that bastard was from a prestigious bloodline. Not to mention that he was the alpha's only remaining relative, his nephew no less. No less. Disgusting. I growled lowly as my rage mounted. Alexia still had to take self-defense lessons from him too. Aside from me, he was our best warrior. Ugh. At least as far as fighting abilities went. I questioned his empathy or strategic abilities, and I knew why I couldn't do it. The meeting bond stopped us from physically hurting each other by also hurting us. It didn't make the pill easier. Wait, where am I? It didn't make the pill easier to swallow watching Grayson take delight in being cruel while he trained her. She could heal fast, sure. Her genetic makeup was that of a vampire, so she had regenerative capabilities, and her Banjuri side allowed her to have control over fire and air, although she favoured fire more. Grayson had a habit of going out of his way to stab, cut, and break her. Most of the times I could watch because it made me want to rip his throat out and tear him to pieces. I remember the first time he had sparred with her. She ended up with 3 broken ribs and a black eye just because, according to him, she wasn't fast enough. When I saw her black eye and heard her hiss in pain, I lost my shit and caught Grayson as soon as he returned to the Pact house. I bailed him against the Pact house wall and I returned the favour. Beating the ever-loving shit. Beating the ever-loving shit out of him in full view of the majority of the pack. The downside? There is no downside. Oh. Alpha Sterling had caught me and reprimanded me. Grayson also now knew she was my mate, knowing how possessive and mad wolves could get when they see their mates being hurt or in any discomfort. And now he provoked me any chance he got. After our fight, I noticed that he had become slightly creepy towards Alexia, often touching her out of turn and catcalling her. Unfortunately, fuck, she's dumb. She thought he was just doing this as part of training, not realizing the subtle shifts of his fingers near her breasts or ass as he taught her the best stance or position, but I knew exactly what he was playing at. Alexia felt my hate, believing it was just a result of our link, and we had learned to block the bond while she sparred, so I wouldn't feel her pain and tear Grayson's throat out. I want this guy to die so badly. Grayson will get what is coming to him, Knox. We will kill to protect our mate. Midnight. Vowed through our mind. I hummed back in reply. My ears twitched again as noise from the cabin reached me. It meant that Alexia was up. Finally, and had started with her routine. I know she had to spar with Grayson later on today, which I was going to watch if I could. I got up, shook out my fur, and leapt over the stream. making my way to the steps of the cabin. As I waited, I watched the animals come and go, promising Midnight that he would get to hunt them when he had some free time. Oh, excuse me. Come next winter, I would prowl the nearby thickets for firewood, which I would chop and neatly stack for the fireplace, so Alexia would be warm. I'd make small holes in the stream when it had frozen over so I could fish, and if I caught enough, I'd leave some on the porch of the cabin for Alexia to dry and spice or pickle for the rest of the pack. They loved her pickled fish. I was pulled out of my thoughts when the door to the cabin opened and I caught sight of Alexia's back as she shut and locked the door. "Mate!" Midnight screamed at me, wagging our tail happily, letting our tongue hang out, which resulted in a goofy wolfish grin. Oh my god. I internally rolled my eyes, but pushed forward to see her from his point of view, gently reminding him that I knew who she was. he always yelled the word mate at me when we saw Alexia, as if I could forget. Even though I towered over the poor girl in both human and wolf form, from the day I met her, she had never been afraid of us. She was beautiful, her russet hair full of curls that bounced and swayed when she moved, entrancing me. Lightly tanned skin adorned her body, a tribute to countless hours spent in the sun. And her clear complexion told of her vitality. Through the intoxication of her presence, Midnight let out a happy howl. She jumped in fright, whipping around only for her expression to soften when she saw it was us. I felt my breath leave me as she smiled, and I had to shake my head to clear my thoughts, as if that was going to clear the images it conjured. "Calm down, you lovesick fool," I chilled at him. Midnight let out a high-pitched whine, lay down in submission, and did a small belly crawl with a few yips as Alexia moved away from the door. I rolled my eyes. He was no better than a hormonal pup. "Hi," she squealed as she rushed towards me. Alexia knelt down and threw her arms around me, just as I lifted my head so it was level with hers. I felt tiny shivers as her hands wormed their way into my fur. I suddenly found myself wishing I was in my human form, her fingers intertwined in my hair, her lips close to mine. I shook the thought aside instead, allowing Midnight to enjoy how her small fingers felt when they ran through our fur. Just the thought made me shudder again, but Alexia didn't notice. I nuzzled her neck with my snout to huff in her scent, and the fragrance of vanilla and mandarins wafted up into my nose, hitting me like a ton of bricks. I was almost drooling right there. But another smell invaded my senses, making my stomach roll, and I nearly gagged, almost missing the mischievous glint in my mate's eye. "Oh crap, no. I've missed you too. You must have had another nightmare, huh?" she added, her expression softening. "Sorry I wasn't up early this morning for you. I was up late making some things for the Pact kitchens. But I know what you need. You need some pickled fish," she quipped, digging into her backpack and holding up a jar of said pickled fish. In response, I growled in disgust and attacked her face with slobbery, wet licks, hoping she'd put down the offending jar. Internally, though, I was shuddering. I was never eating that disgusting shit again, and she knew it. I remembered a few years ago, the first time I had her pickled fish, I almost spat it in her face in front of the whole pack during a picnic for the trainee baiters. Now she wouldn't let me live it down. It was like she would carry those damn things with her everywhere, waiting for me to show up and shove one in my face. This wasn't the first time we had this conversation. Ew, wolf's liver. Okay, no more pickled fish, I swear, she said with a squeal as she wiped her face. She slipped the jar back into her bag with a giggle. I guess she was delivering the jar to one of the other wolves living in the pack house. I let out a mock offended huff, and Alexia rubbed my ears in apology. I leant into her touch before I could stop myself. Aw, is that joke getting a little old now? I'm sorry, you big bad wolf. Did I hurt your sensitive feelings with pickled fish? She asked mockingly, and I just shook my huge head as she giggled. It got old the second time she did that, I said to Midnight while he chuckled. It came out as a wolfish huff and made Alexia raise an eyebrow in question. I just shook my large head and she shrugged. Midnight would always indulge her silly behaviour, since it made her happy to tease us, even if we knew she'd kick our ass if we needed it. She might have an innocent air and quality to her, but she was far from innocent or meek herself. She didn't even like the fact that she came from a court of all places, refusing to let others call her princess, and while she missed her parents and her home, even after it was destroyed, she wasn't upset at all about missing out on court politics. She had been forced to study them though, and once, under guise, she was allowed to visit her homeland and witness a court session. She had told me later she'd rather crawl naked through mud and thorns than be bored to death. For some reason, that image had almost killed me. I guess she was more wolf now. Of a wolf now, as she seemed to enjoy the pack hierarchy more. The alpha, the betas, then everyone else with their own purpose. We all helped each other out as much as we could. I'm going to go and pick some berries, check the traps, and deliver this jar to one of the cooks at the pack house. Did you want to come with me, Knox? She asked, breaking through my thoughts like a ray of sunshine through fog. Oh my God, get me a bucket. Her head now tilted to the right, looking me dead in the eyes. Yes, too. She was the only one who was able to do so while I was either in human or wolf form without Midnight taking it as a threat. I was about to get up and go with her when the alpha mind linked me. Swaver, we have a new intelligence report suggesting that there has been a human male centered in the area. You need to scout the area between the pack house and Alexia's cottage and report back immediately. His raspy voice rang in my mind like rolling thunder, and I rolled my eyes towards the sky. Yes, sir. Wait, I did smell something a bit odd on the way to see Alexia this morning, so that might have been it. Well, you better get on to it. We haven't had a human centered in our lanes in a while, came the brisk reply. Yes, Alpha. Sir, what about Alexia? She's leaving the cabin, and I'm supposed to be going with. I was cut off as a low growl came through the other end of the link. Are you questioning me, boy? Sterling demanded. No, sir, but I'm not, I started to say, but I was again cut off. Then get Mark or Lyndon to go with her. You need to get your head in the game, son. There's more going on here than just your mate or your hormones. I won't tolerate any back talk from you. Or have you questioning my orders? Do I make myself clear? He ordered. His tone had turned harsh, and there was an unmistakable threat underlining it. Then silence. Damn, he needs to find another mate and get laid fast, Midnight said, and I suppressed the urge to laugh. I took a deep breath and slowly counted to 10 before I mumbled, yes, sir. A small pop signaled the end of the link, serving our connection. I let out a breath I'd been holding in. So much for being one of the Alpha's top warriors when he treated me like a grunt. I fired off a quick link to both Mark and Lyndon about keeping Alexia company, and they were more than happy to comply. Great. I quickly glanced down at Alexia as I slowly took my head out of her hands and shook it. She sighed softly, and a small frown playing upon her face. How much trouble can she get in while I'm chasing down a human? I wondered. Her melodic voice was a welcomed interruption. All right then, you must have a busy day if it's a short visit. Come find me when you're finished, okay? I'll be behind the cabin training. The least you can do is watch me kick some ass. She stood up and dusted off the knees of her dark-coloured pants. I could tell she was disappointed as she walked away, slightly hunched. I growled in disgust, and it must have shown in a wolfish snarl as Alexia looked back at me. You know, he isn't that bad. He's actually incredibly helpful, even if he does get a bit rough during our sparring matches. Yeah, if by a bit rough meant that he had nearly killed her half a dozen times. Creep. Great. Grayson will be on his way here soon. Yippee! Good for him. More of his creepy obsessiveness over my mate, I thought sarcastically, hiding my emotions from Alexia as I watched her walk into the dark woods. I hated that son of a bitch. Hated the way he looked at her like she was a piece of meat, and hated when he'd become handsy with her, all to make me jealous. And I hated that he knew it worked. The sooner we got rid of the mole and whoever is hunting her, the sooner Alexia and I can be together. Well, after ironing out a few details, I guess. Damn the mole, damn the circle, and damn all the shit that came with it. I stood up and pulled myself from the thoughts and rage with a sharp shake, trotting off into the opposite direction to find myself a trespasser. I hope you guys enjoyed this.